Welcome to another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement. I am here at the News Forum where all voices matter. We welcome back Dr. Ross McKitrick to the show. He was last on 4 years ago, and time marches on. He's a professor of economics at the University of Guelph. Welcome back, sir.
Thanks, Tony. Glad to be back.
Great to have you back, of course, and wanted to ask you about this study that you led, detailing the economic costs for the federal government's emission reduction targets. So, what were your conclusions, and what did you arrive at?
Um, I broke down what's called the emission reduction plan into three components. So the first one is the carbon tax. People are quite familiar with that. The second part is the clean fuel regulation, which some people have heard of. People are a little less familiar with that. And then the rest of it is this long list of well over 100 additional policies. People are beginning to be aware of them, things like the electric vehicle mandate, aggressive building energy efficiency targets, the emissions cap for the oil and gas sector, all kinds of requirements like that. And so I looked at each component cumulatively. So the carbon tax on its current trajectory, out to $170 a ton, that will be costly for the economy as of 2030. I think it'll take a little over 1% off the size of the economy and roughly the same knock off of people's real income. I would say it'll be costly but manageable, but at the same time, it won't really get us to the Paris target. It won't reduce emissions nearly as much as the government is hoping. The second part, the clean fuel standard, more than doubles the cost of the package and doesn't get us to Paris either. It adds a bit to emission reduction, but not a lot. The third component, though, that's where the costs just go through the roof. All these extra regulations, they are a serious threat. I would put it by 2030 as a 6% reduction in GDP compared to what it otherwise would be, and about a 5.5% cut in real income for the average worker. These are very expensive policies. Ironically, they do the least as far as emission reductions too. They things like the EV mandate is very expensive, but it doesn't have much in the way of short-run benefit for emission reduction. There's a lot of detail in the report, a lot of detail about the components of the package. One of the points that I emphasize, though, is this is by far the largest economic policy restructuring in my lifetime, and the government has put out almost no information about it. I'm sure you remember things like the Kyoto Protocol, and before that, the Free Trade Agreement. These were big policy changes. Right. And the federal government put out a ton of information about what they expected the impacts to be on every sector of the economy. There was a lot of work done within the federal government. This is different. This is a much bigger hit to the economy, a much bigger restructuring, and just nothing from the government. The emission reduction plan itself has no details about what they think will happen.
So why do you think that is? Is it because no information really exists, or because they can't be bothered to tell the Canadian people about it?
There is some information in the government. The staff is still there who would, in the past, have done this kind of analytical work. Well, some of the staff, a lot of them have actually gone. But no, that's a decision at the cabinet level. In the document, they have a section where they, in principle, tell people what the economic effects will be, and it's just all sunny ways rhetoric. It just says this is great, it'll be wonderful new economic opportunities, and we have to do it, and that's it. It's about a page and a half and doesn't give you any information. So my effort, the report that I put out through the Fraser Institute, was an attempt to fill the gap here and let people see, no, this is a big deal. It's going to be very costly. And at this point, we don't even have the technology to hit the targets that they're talking about.
And we got 30 seconds till the break, but it's clear from your analysis that the carbon tax is just less than a third of the story, it sounds like.
Right. People are upset about the cost of the carbon tax, but there's much bigger costs coming behind it.
We're going to take a brief break with our guest, Dr. Ross McKitrick. He is a professor of economics at the University of Guelph, talking about a very interesting report studying the emission reduction targets of the federal government. We'll be back after these messages.